Hello and welcome everybody to the 167 podcast.
Let's go.
So great to have you. And we are joined as always by our co-host Phil Kutsia. I'm Sven Steffens. Great to have you guys online with us. And here at the 167 podcast, we like to say that we know that there are 168 hours in the week. One of them would be spent in church, hopefully. And then the other 167 hours, we don't want to leave abandoned, but we want to add value. We want to help you in your walk with God. We want to help you with your family. We want to help you with your life. And so we want to bring content that's going to be helpful to you in the other 167.
Let's go.
And we know that you sleep because sleep avoids burnout. Check the previous episodes.
Go back. Go watch.
But we want to give a quick shout out to our subscribers on YouTube, watching on the YouTube podcast. Great to see you guys.
Great to have you.
For our podcast listeners, we've got I don't know, it's like estimate audience of 24, but we love you 24.
So that would be would that be a consistent 24?
It goes up and it goes down, but as of this week, it's 24.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 164 plays. Like our podcast has been played 164 times on some sort of audio device.
That's amazing. And we got 24 people. Thank you so much. Those
Thanks
24 who make us a part of your week.
That's right.
We hope that it's really helpful and that you enjoy it and that you have a laugh, because we enjoy laughing.
Absolutely. Well, listen, there are 47, I think, as of this recording on YouTube. So if I was a competitive person, which
you're not. I don't think so. I don't think so. Do you like losing? No.
Who likes losing?
No one likes it.
You know, like people that say it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what happens as long as you enjoy the game. I'm like, but it's never fun to lose.
What if enjoying means winning?
Is there any other way to enjoy it?
I don't think so.
No.
That's a podcast for another day.
For another day.
We'll talk about the dangers of competitiveness.
Or the health, I don't know, but definitely we'll have something about that. I also think we need to do a podcast on 2021.
Yeah, good.
I'd really love to do that. How are people starting 2021? What's the attitude? What's the feeling for 2021?
Are people stoked? Because remember, we were all very stoked for 2020.
Yeah, 2020 was a big year.
I think everybody's going to be way more hesitant now. Like, just like the New Year's party is kind of like, it's like 12:01. You're like, yay, Happy New Year.
Do we hug?
Yeah.
Oh wait, your coronavirus is gone.
It's a new year. It's gone. We can hug. Do all those things.
I still remember, like you mentioned on Sunday, all the 2020 vision talks. Like I'm glad I never had one of those vision talks. It was like perfect vision.
Yeah, God
vision.
led us in that direction.
Why am I in this world of this?
Oh my goodness! No, listen, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what people say, and get ready for 2021.
Yeah, I think we need to do a podcast for 20. Looking forward, looking ahead. Hey, come on, it'll be.
I think we can look forward. Like, who knows? Doesn't mean that it's going to be the best year ever. We can still be excited.
Well, it could be. We'll prophesy.
We can. Bro, I'm reading the book of Jeremiah at the moment, and it's just about guys prophesying, but it's not what God wants them to say.
Totally.
And all Jeremiah does is go to these prophets and be like, you didn't hear from God, you didn't hear from God, you didn't hear from God. Sorry, that's really negative. I don't know how I figured that out.
No, but let's be honest, everybody, it's only a word from God when it's good news.
Oh, my goodness.
Bad news.
Yeah, well, that's what we believe.
I'm actually reading through the prophets at the moment, but the prophet I'm reading is Isaiah, and Isaiah has a lot of hope.
Jeremiah,
like massive judgment, a lot of hope.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm traveling through the wilderness of Jeremiah. It's still a very good book. There's a lot to learn, but definitely a different type of read.
He cried a lot.
He did.
All I remember.
He did cry a lot, and for good reason. I don't blame him. Like people call, I don't blame him.
Didn't he ask God to kill him at one point?
Yes, he did.
Oh, that's heavy.
God asked him to put a wooden yoke on his neck to symbolize what was going to happen to Israel. Imagine.
Who was the prophet who was like lying down naked in the street and then would turn over every
I thought that was you.
If I was a prophet, that would be amazing.
I haven't stumbled upon his book yet.
No, I wonder if it's Jeremiah.
It could be. I'm not finished yet.
I don't know.
It could be in the underlying...
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler alert. You've stopped it for me.
But you know what? Even on that, like, I think bad news is part of life. And so that's why we wanted to share the message of hope in the dark.
Good.
Believing God is good even when life is not.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have a conversation about that today, not to give people all the content of the book, but just to give our sort of review on what we've read in the book.
Yeah.
And direct people to go purchase it.
Yeah.
If they so feel, like download the Kindle. We should actually have like affiliation accounts. I never thought of that.
I think so.
But maybe for another time. This was for free.
Read what the 167 is reading. Thing. Anyway, we'll get there.
Give Craig Groeschel a shout out.
Brilliant book.
I enjoyed. Listen, it's not a book that you just want to like dive.
It's not light reading.
Yeah, it's not light reading.
Yeah.
It's a quick read. It's very short. I mean, it's like under 200 pages. So you're going to get through it really quickly. But my view of the book full is that this book was, if you're going through anything, it's going to speak to you.
Yeah.
I think if you're not going through anything, it might feel a bit heavy.
Yeah.
Look, it could prepare you.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. We said, we prepare for the battle before the battle.
Good. Yeah.
So that might help you. But certainly, if you're going through anything, you're going to find common ground in this book, and you're going to be like, wow, like that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have.
Listen, when you suggested reading this book for the podcast, I thought, it's like the perfect. Yeah, I hadn't read it yet. I just heard about it, and I thought, what a perfect time to read a book like this, and like the book that we're going to speak about, because I think, and obviously it's themed along the story of Habakkuk, who goes forward, and no, I didn't just swear on the podcast for those wondering. That's a book in the Bible.
Gesundheit.
Yeah, Gesundheit. Asking these hard questions and going through moments of doubt, going through moments of hopelessness, and I think that could be some of our listeners, some of our viewers' story for 2020. It's going through a time where everything changed. The plans got shifted on their head, moved around, and then you start having the doubts. Yeah. Then you start asking questions. And I love how Craig Groeschel goes through this book and actually gives a lot of people space to ask God some hard questions, and to really consider, think about, and actually how good it is for our faith to go through moments of actually asking some hard questions and thinking about our life and thinking about what God could possibly be doing. Not always about, why it's me and having a victim mentality, but more asking questions like, what is happening right now?
That's right.
What could God be doing through this? Not really why and what not. So maybe we can start and talk. I think, like you said, I think trying to go through all of the content, it's going to be difficult. Yeah. Maybe one or two things that have stood out.
Absolutely.
Out to us could help people.
You know what I think also, Phil, just to set the table before we get into this, is that I think we're at risk at giving plastic answers to difficult questions. Yeah. I think one-liners, for instance, in sermons are helpful because they're sticky and it helps people travel with that. But you can't have a one-liner to a cancer diagnosis. I mean, this year we've had people have lost their jobs. In fact, we heard a testimony of a family that lost both their jobs
the
on the
same day. Yeah.
Okay, but that's come around and God supplied for them. Cancer diagnosis that was looking like it's clearing up got more aggressive. Those aren't simple, questions or things to answer. And I think that it's so easy for people to question God's love. And right from there was this quote, which I read to you just now, which I loved, about God's love. It says, our vision is so limited we can hardly imagine a love that does not show itself in protection from suffering. The love of God did not protect his own son, Elizabeth Elliot. Yeah. And I love that because, in a way, that's our Western mindset, because we want comfort. We don't want suffering. We don't know suffering. Yeah. If someone offends me, I'm suffering. Yeah. But majority of the world is dealing with massive issues of poverty, of
big time
crimes against humanity, of all these types of things. We don't know what it's like, but it just because we don't know what to do with suffering doesn't mean God doesn't love us if we are suffering. Yeah. I think that's the point of this book for me, is hope in the dark, is that we're all going to travel through dark times. We're all going to travel through suffering. Yeah. But there is something still that we can hold on to. Yeah. And that is the hope that is in Christ Jesus, of God's love. And so, that for me was just so.
Well, even on that, I mean, I think, I think that's so good. And I think what also he alluded to was how the church has gotten pretty good at, like you're saying, not being brilliant at talking about really tough situations. Yeah. So we love saying, and I will throw myself right in here with the rest of us, is we love saying, hey, just pray about it and have faith for more and just trust God and it will get better. And he's speaking about sometimes you go through situations, and he even describes scenarios. That's probably why we say it's not the lightest read ever. It's not depressing, but I mean, it's real. Yeah. And it's what you'll experience in life. And he would describe scenarios of things in his own life, in the lives of people in his church, where they go through very real scenarios, very real situations. And the answer there is not for someone from church to just say, hey, you've just got small faith. Yeah. Or let's just pray together. Yeah. And let's just trust God that we can. Sometimes it goes deeper. And it doesn't mean that we don't pray or we don't have faith, but sometimes it goes so much deeper where you actually start having a look at really where you're at with God. That's right, and start asking some hard questions and then getting the right people around you who can help you think about what the right questions are. Because when you're in the middle of it, when you're in the middle of the diagnosis and when you're in the middle of the job loss or what 2020 could have thrown at you, it's so difficult to think about how can I see what's really happening here? Because when you're in it, you can't see it. You're just seeing the obstacle. You're just seeing the problem. What I loved about this book was Craig Groeschel giving permission to people, really saying that you're not now a bad Christian because you're going through something tough and now you start to doubt things or start to doubt, you ask, is God really good? If God allows that in my life, what does it say about him? What does it say about me? And for me, it was just great to say, just be reminded of people can have gone through something tough this year. Your faith might have been shaken this year. You might have gone through things that really have kind of got your back up, and that's fine. Because we can still have great conversations out of it and hopefully lead to a better place and a stronger place.
Good. I think that even leads on to I think you mentioned to me that there was one part of this book that really stood out to you in this beginning section, which I think was on the issue of the crisis of belief.
Crisis of belief, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you think it is? I mean, because I think part of the fear in wanting to not dig into because following Jesus is a mystery. There's a lot to God that's a mystery. We will never know. Yeah. We don't know how to handle both joy and suffering in the same conversation, or love and despair. Like, how does that work together? We don't know. Nah. We don't know. But there is a crisis of belief that comes when bad things happen. Yes. Right. There is an initial shaking. Yes. And what do you think it is? Do you think that's good? Do you think it's bad? How can people handle the crisis of belief?
I think it's I think it's a great question. And there was a part that I'd almost obviously have increased this book at all because it's a gift to somebody that we're going to be giving away, which we'll talk about later. Absolutely. But for me, what really stood out was speaking about a question, and we actually say it in church, but the scriptures sometimes is taken a bit out of context where in the book of Corinthians, it talks about 1 Corinthians 10:13. The Bible says that God won't let you be tempted beyond what you can handle, which is true. He won't. Sometimes we think that is also referring to actual circumstances and situations in our lives where we think God will never put me through something so tough that I won't be able to handle it, which is actually false. Yeah. Which is a bit alarming, to be open and honest. When you read that, you're like, okay, well, that's scary. You're telling me I'm going to go through something which technically in my own strength I won't be able to handle. That's hard to hear, but then when you begin to think about it and think about what our relationship with God is really like and what faith is all about, it is about the moments in your life when you realize you're too small or you're too weak or you don't have the capacity or the strength to make it through something. And then that's when we begin to start going on a journey of taking reliance off of ourselves and onto God. I love this chapter or this section of Crisis of Belief because it talks about a moment in life when you have that realization, when you have it like, this is the moment when everything in my power is not going to be enough. That's quite an anxiety-provoking thought. It's quite a scary thought. And at that point, you're almost thinking, well, what now? That's when hopelessness, that's when it descends in you. And I think some people actually go the other direction. I think that's a moment where people walk away from God. It becomes a moment where things get really difficult and you strive even more. Or some people start to realize, well, I actually just need God right now. I can't in my own strength. I'm trying to articulate this well enough, but it's like I can't in my own power do this by myself. And then it increases reliance on God. So he also says something which is quite controversial, and he says that some people might disagree. But he thinks that sometimes God will let us get to a place where our faith is so tested so that we can have this moment. And you can think, well, God would allow things like that. I actually do believe that God would allow things in our lives if the fruit of it is I'm going to grow closer to him. If the fruit of it is that there's going to be an increased reliance on him, then I'd understand why some things would be allowed in our lives. But this crisis of belief, again, he doesn't talk about it as something that happens to one or two people. It's something that most people will face at some point. It could be a financial thing, a career, or losing a person. I think the death of somebody in my brain feels like that'll be a moment that'll be very difficult to handle. That could be your moment where you have that
death
crisis.
of anything, really. You could have a death of a business. You could have a death of a relationship.
Totally.
Death of a dream.
Totally.
You know?
But are we okay with the thought of there will be things in my life I can't handle?
Absolutely.
I think if we can can we come to terms with that, like right now? Can we actually just say right now to the listeners and that there will be things in my life I can't handle,
without a doubt,
and I can try to handle it, and it might kill you in the process, or it might kill stuff inside of you, your hope, your joy, your peace, because you're going to try and try and try, and it's just not going to work out. I think the better we are at understanding that things will come that I can't handle. And when I can grow in reliance in God and actually to give it over to God, almost sounds like a cop-out. Yeah. It almost sounds like the weak Christians are looking for a way to take their burdens off of them. But this is what God is all about. He says, cast your burdens onto me. Yeah. My yoke is easy. So for me, I love that, because I think this is particularly something that I would struggle with. Someone who likes to be in control, who likes to handle things. Because if I had to honestly look at my 24 years now, you might have a different perspective, but I don't think I've had
25 years isn't that much.
I mean, a couple months. But for me personally, I don't think I've had. I think I've had maybe small tastes of this, but I think more moments like this will happen in my life. And I think every time it arrives, you've got to remind yourself, it's okay. I can't handle this. I understand that, but God can.
Even there, though, I feel like sometimes people go one or the other way.
They do.
They go, okay, that means I can't handle anything. I've got to give God everything. And that means God's just going to bring the job to me. He's just going to bring the spouse to me. He's just going to, it's just all going to fall out of the sky. Yeah, no, he still wants us to grow. So he wants us to be an overcomer. And I've always acknowledged this saying from Phil Pringle, saying that the only way to become an overcomer is if there's something for us to overcome. Yeah. But I think the way we travel, and I think God allows us, he allows us to push until we're at the edge of ourselves. And that's the point where we have to go, I'm at the end of myself. God, I need
That's a great way to look at it.
If you don't step in now, this is going to fall apart.
Is that how you would, if someone had to ask you, when do I know that I've got to stop working and start to hand it over to God? Because I mean, he mentioned a story about a friend of his that he gyms with, and he lost his job, but he was just so faithful that God was going to give him another job. He didn't fill in any CVs. He didn't do anything. And then he ended up having to move in with his friend, sleeping on a couch, which I don't think was God's plan for him. How do we decipher when is it time for me to move and to action myself, or when's it time to handle God? I mean, you alluded to it now.
I think you've got to do prayerfully everything you can do in the natural, in your physical capacity. You've got to do it. Because maybe it's not a spiritual issue. Maybe it's just a laziness issue, or something practical, or you know, it's like if you want to go out with someone and you want to get married one day, hey, come man, put on some deodorant, dress nice, brush your teeth,
impress them,
and ask somebody out. You know what I mean? So there are some practical things, but I think what can happen is when we get to that very edge, it's almost like you pick up weights again that are too heavy for you. Everything else has worked out just fine, and you go to that next level, and it's too much for you. And what do? You need someone to help you out. For a little bit.
Spot on. Doesn't mean you should not use them.
Exactly. And so I think that's the case of like, okay, when is it beyond me, or when is it within my realm of capacity? So I think that's different depending on the circumstance. All right, if you lose someone, there's not much you can do there, but you can experience God in a different way. And I love that what he talks about in the book is like, there's ways to experience God's love in comfort when you lose someone, or there's a way to experience God's love as a healer because he brought somebody back. And I love that his love isn't in question. And I think we got to be okay with the mystery. And for me, that's why just coming back to the book, I love this, is that he allows for the mystery and still allows for faith. And even on that crisis of belief, I think that your faith can only grow when you get a crisis of belief.
I agree.
So every big problem is not just a problem, but it's an opportunity to go, you know what, I'm going to get through this, and my faith is going to grow, my faith is going to expand. I think every every couple of years, we need to have this point of, I need my faith to grow.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's only through problems that my faith grows, because then I actually get to see God move. But it's how we respond in that as well. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question there,
You
but
did.
I think
I've got another question, if that's cool, just sticking in line with kind of the theme of the book, speaking obviously based on the book of Habakkuk and asking questions.
there's no cool way to say Habakkuk.
I can't, I'm just trying to say it softly, but
Yeah.
I think it's coming through quite strong on the mic anyway. Just asking tough questions. Do you think, for the people that are listening and have maybe got doubts and have maybe asked questions, is there a healthy way to ask tough questions and to express doubts? And do you think there is an unhealthy way? Because Craig speaks about it so well in the beginning, and he gives us permission to do it. But I think there's some ways where we can still stay in a good space and have doubts in a good space and ask tough questions. And I think there's also a way that we can maybe it can start becoming something that isn't as healthy anymore, isn't as helpful anymore. Maybe in your experience as a leader and dealing with people and working with young Christians, would you give advice maybe to somebody who's got doubts on how to ask the right questions? What would be good channels to go through to speak about?
Listen, I think that's a really good question. And what Craig is in the book is like, God, like, where are you? God, this is unjust. God, how can you let this happen?
Yeah.
And those are very good, honest, real questions.
They are.
Using Habakkuk. And even if you read through the Psalms and David going, God, like, how can you let this happen?
Yeah,
And
the Psalms are a big place for questions.
absolutely. So I think it's clear that God can handle our questions.
Yes.
And I think he can even handle our anger. So I think as long as we're directing them to the Lord,
there you
not
go.
criticizing God,
No.
but directing it to the Lord. I think when we start directing it to other people,
Yeah.
I think it's more trying to get our unbelief fed than our faith fed.
Wow.
I think when we go to God, we
That's
go,
good. Yeah.
God, I don't know what to do with this.
What do you want fed? That's great.
And what Craig Groeschel says is like, even in the book, he's like, God speaks to people in different ways. So sometimes he speaks through scripture, sometimes it's by his spirit, sometimes it's through people. So I think when you go to God first, you actually allow a realm of possibility for him to speak to you
Very good.
and to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going to other people, trying to get them onto your page,
Yeah.
that's unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going, God's not a provider. Look what has happened to my life.
Yeah.
Isn't there a place in your life? And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that becomes accusatory
Yes.
as opposed to questioning.
Yes.
And I think when you go to God directly, you very quickly realize, okay,
Yeah.
like, I need to come with humility. I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I'm questioning your goodness, God.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with how you would even allow this in my life.
Yeah.
I think those are
I think we can ask those questions of God and still maintain what Craig refers to as awe, as reverence,
yes, absolutely.
as I want to say respect, but I think it's so much more than that. I think we can still revere God as God and being who he says he is, who we read him to be, and ask him those questions. And there's another line where he talks about, I think God welcomes far more our questions, even if it is fiery, and even if there's some hurt and there's some doubt, than someone who turns away and just grows cold towards him.
Absolutely.
I think he far more welcomes. So I love what you said. Then I think for the people that have got doubts and questions, be it theological, be it experiential, I think that's how you say that. That to go and have those questions. And I also think that there are people in your life that it's good to have meaningful conversations with.
Absolutely.
I think what are bad conversations, and I was chatting to somebody earlier about it, is that a lot of people want to have debates about things that aren't in the Bible.
Sure.
And they want to have debates about things, and I'll bring it around, when I have debate about things that there isn't really an answer for it that we can get from scripture and that we can take to the bank and it's concrete. But what we can do is we can have great conversations with people who love us, people who love God, and actually take our question there and have a conversation about that very same thing, but still with the desire to obey God, still with the desire to revere God, who he is, and both grow closer to him in the process. I think you've almost got to set goals for a conversation before you have it. And to say, at the end of this, I still want to honor God.
I think this trying to understand
Yes.
is something healthy for your heart.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Because even then talking to someone who's close to the Lord, and you can say, I don't understand. Why would this happen? Those are healthy questions because they're not accusatory. They're genuinely trying to resolve a conflict on the inside.
Yeah.
And I think, so I agree with you. Speak to people. But again, like, you don't go speak to someone about how God how would God allow you to lose your business except they've lost 10 businesses or they've never had a business? Like, why would you even bother asking?
No, you got to use some
You've
wisdom.
got to find the right people to ask. And spiritual people in your life is always a great place. Your life group leader or ministry leader or
100%,
whatever is always a great place to go.
Yeah.
So of course, like, he's very open and honest. In the beginning, he's like, the process is you've got to ask questions. What I really like about this first section, and then we can maybe move on to the second one, is where he says, oh man, he says, if you don't deal with the doubt and you don't deal with the grief, it's actually more destructive. Like, you actually have to sit and deal with it. You actually have to face it head on.
Yeah.
Not try bury it, and then, because it's going to come down, it's going to come back on you.
Yeah.
A year, 2 years, 3 years down the line.
That's very good.
Deal with the grief. Deal with ask the tough questions. Travel through mystery, because we don't like mystery. We want to. Everything has to be known.
Yeah.
And that's impossible with God.
Yeah.
How can we know everything about him?
Well, on a practical level, I think that the people will work through things today that they might have experienced when they were younger. And I think problems that you don't deal with today can still affect you in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, except you're not going to be a 20-year-old young adult. You're going to be a 40-year-old dad with kids, and you might still have the same issues. So from a practical point of view, and I'll be super open and vulnerable here. Childhood was definitely mixed, and I had different experiences with my parents. Both my parents are amazing, and I love them both. But going through a divorce and all of those things, there were remnants of issues that I was still dealing with. And what I did was, upon the advice of one of my church leaders, was I actually went to go speak to somebody. Yep. I went to go speak to someone who I had a couple of sessions with, and I was able to start the process of working through some of the feelings I had, some of the experiences I had, some of the thoughts that I was still having, and he was able to help me process those thoughts and actually take me on a journey on, this is how we can work through it, and this is how this doesn't have to affect you when you get married or when you have kids or when you parent or whatever the deal is. Because like you're saying, it's about being intentional about dealing with something, because like, if you don't deal with it today, it's almost like we think that just age is the healer of all wounds. I think sometimes that if you leave something, what happens? It festers.
Yeah, it festers, and I think you grow cold in that area, and you stop growing in that area. So you might be 40, but you're still 20-year-old or 9-year-old
in that area.
Yeah. And I think that's where your heart can grow cold. I'm just going to sweep it under the rug. I'm going to sweep it under the rug. I'm going to sweep it under the rug. And then where's your faith? It's not. I don't have faith in it. I don't have real faith, and I think your heart can grow cold. In fact, I heard Levi Lusko talk in a recent conversation about he wanted to, because obviously they lost their daughter.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
And I think you can read it in Through the Eyes of a Lion.
Through the Eyes of a Lion, yeah.
And a brilliant book, from what I understand. But he says in a recent thing that if they said to themselves that they're going to feel the pain even if it kills them.
Jeez.
And I thought that was very brave and courageous. He said for the first time in his life, he could understand why people would get into drug addiction, why people would cut themselves, because they would want to feel hurt in a different way. So I can and he says
what they were experiencing.
Wow. They just wanted to feel like something else.
Jeez.
And so he says he never got to that point, but it happens that people can try and get numb of the pain, but then you don't deal with it, and it comes back at a later stage. Yeah. And so rather deal with it. And that's why I love about Craig Groeschel saying, go through it, ask the questions, deal with the doubts, because doubt will build your faith if you have the right attitude towards it. So I thought that was good.
I think we need to have more compassion, as a church and as Christians, as more compassion on people who are going through those things and then have gone down that route of drugs or alcohol to numb the pain, because they're not bad people, if you understand. And we've all got our stuff, so we're not sitting here saying that we don't have our stuff. Everybody's got their stuff. But if we're looking at those things specifically, because you're talking about things that numb the pain, we should have way more compassion for people instead of looking at them through judgmental eyes or through eyes of, what decisions have you made in your life that's led you to this point. More than often, it's probably pain. It's probably experiences that have taken place. Yes, bad decisions can always accompany that type of thing. But if we can just start being a church that, yes, we don't want to just say, we'll pray for you or whatever, but to be hands-on, to be practical, and to love somebody wherever they are in the journey. Yeah. Because if you're an addict, you've probably just further along on the journey have made 1 or 2 wrong decisions. Whereas if if somebody just got to you earlier, or shared a message with you earlier, you might not be there.
Yeah,
I think we can still help people back from that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And of course, what we don't want to do is just, I think as believers, we don't just want to go and acknowledge the pain. We actually want to be able to travel through it.
Yeah.
And so this book is good at identifying with Habakkuk and saying, look, he had all these big questions. Where was God? How could he allow all this injustice? But then he starts on the journey of, okay, now how do you get through this?
Yes.
And so the second part of this is where it's lost and found, where he's almost saying, okay, now you need to actually hear from the Lord. Like, what does God actually say about it? Now that you've asked all the questions, will you take the time to listen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you've got a great thing about that. So I just want to, so he kind of goes through this next point of, okay, part 1 was, where are you? Why don't you care? Why aren't you doing something? This seems unfair. Crisis of belief.
It's like a journey. It explains the journey there. Yeah.
Exactly. And then he goes on to, okay, well, this is how you can get through that part of the journey, is you now take time to listen. Write down what you think the Lord is maybe saying to you. Wait. How do you wait?
Yeah.
You know, waiting is horrible. I hate waiting.
Yeah.
Have you ever put popcorn in the microwave and you push 2 minutes?
The longest 2 minutes.
Yeah. Ours is like, actually it's 195 because the last time I melted the popcorn.
Jeez, we've been burning popcorn a lot lately, so maybe ours is also a 2-minute.
Yeah. 2 minutes is generally, depending on the wattage, but it's like, great, there's still another 1 minute and 59 seconds.
Listening to the pops.
And then it's like, okay, now how do you respond by faith? And how your faith needs to be tested. I heard somebody say, I'm trying to remember his name, Jeremy Foster say, a faith that can't be tested is a faith that can't be trusted.
Very
good. Love that.
Yeah,
but
that's
on
awesome.
this part of the book, where it's now start to identify the journey of like, how do you grow in answering those questions, dealing with the difficulty, and walking to a place of maybe wholeness and healing.
Yeah, I believe God is always speaking to us. I mean, we've done a series recently where we spoke about hearing from God, and I think the biggest kind of misconception there is that God doesn't speak to us, or we've got to be in a certain place in our spiritual work to hear from God. I think God is always talking. I think it takes obedience and it takes discipline to hear from God, because it requires things like stillness, and it requires an ability to slow yourself down, to slow your life down, to trust, and to actually hear him and listen to him. Where for me, at this part of the book, he has a little section on listen, and I just resonated so well, but in a bad way, with his stories on listening, because he was just given an example of him sitting in the lounge, just busy, you know. He said he was going through sermon notes, checking emails. He could have been on social media, and then his wife Amy walked in and wanted to speak to him about the schedule of the kids for that week, and he said, cool, you know, let's chat, I've got time. But he never looked up, he never acknowledged her, so she just said immediately, I'll come back when you're actually not busy with something. And he says, no, we can do this now, I'm listening, or I'm hearing you. And she says, well, you know, you haven't even looked up at me yet. And just in that, he says that was a moment where he realized, like, I was hearing her, but I actually wasn't listening. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't engaging with her. And for me, I read that, and I think that is definitely my inclination, is that letting life get busy. Everything feels important. So when I'm on my phone, or you're on your iPad, or you're busy with work, and it's not whatever, just scrolling, it feels important, and it feels like it requires your full attention.
Yes.
But sometimes there are things, and especially when it comes to hearing from God, where we need to have an ability of actually switching off.
That's right.
Actually putting things down, whenever that time is of your day, to just say, I need to completely disconnect. Because if you don't, the risk is you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're not going to be able to hear or listen from God, or listen to God, because you've got other things that are
just distracted,
vying and buying for your attention. You're distracted. We live distracted. And sometimes, even with speaking about numbing the pain, I think distraction's a great numbing agent, because you can just keep yourself focused on different things and not acknowledging the things that are really needing your attention. But when it comes to specifically hearing and listening to God, personally, I need to get better at just saying, well, this is my time with God. Sometimes I personally love reading my Bible on a device, because it feels easy and it's more natural. But to be open and honest, that doesn't really build really well into my listening, because if I leave my Wi-Fi on, then every second minute I'm
airplane
getting,
mode.
or I need to airplane, or I'm getting a notification from something, and I'm not Superman. Sometimes you want to click on it, or sometimes it just distracts you enough where you don't click on it, but your thoughts have moved on, and you're not focusing on if it was reading your Bible, if it was listening to worship music.
Yeah.
So just the whole art of listening, it needs to be partnered with an art of I'm going to be aggressively intentional about putting everything aside when I want to hear from God. And we need to hear from God daily.
That's good. Yeah.
So it's like, flip, am I able to put these things down? I think we are.
Yeah.
I think able.
That's so good. And to be honest, I struggle with listening as well, because sometimes you already have an answer in your mind.
Yeah, you want God to
sometimes you just want to let this go away so you can carry on with what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with our relationship with the Lord. We just we ask Him, but then we never actually stop to wait and listen. And I think through traveling through hard times, we need to take more time to listen and say, okay, what is it that the Lord is trying to...
But it's even harder then. It's even harder when things are tough, because now you've got more on your mind.
Yeah.
You've got more that you're thinking about. There's more that you've got to do. So I even think reading through a book like this, that becomes even harder, because we're not just talking about having a quiet time now and connecting. We're talking about you're going through something that could potentially derail your life or derail the life of your family, or there's financial implications. Now more than ever, you need to trust God and be still. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely tough. And I think we've got to practice that muscle. And maybe today, like you're saying, we've said a few times now that you don't prepare for the battle in the battle.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not right now in the middle of a life-changing, altering moment where you need to trust God. But right now you can get better at listening.
That's right.
Because a moment will come when your life is about to be derailed, or things do feel like it's going to overcome and overwhelm. But you've already learned how to listen.
Yeah, that's good.
You've already learned how to slow down, how to be still, how to put things down, because that is a muscle that I think if we don't have that in those moments, it's going to become extremely difficult to trust God.
I completely agree with you on all of that. And in fact, for me, one of the parts in the book which comes off, because he always talks about writing stuff down after listening.
I'm not a big writer.
After you listen, write it down. And he talks about, which I think I'm actually going to try out. It's on I've written it down already.
You've written
I've written
to write down
what I want to write down. So I'm planning on doing a 5-year journal.
Wow.
Because I've also heard other people do it. And
a 5-year journal.
5-year journal. So on a page, it's split down into 5.
Yes.
And the page is the same day every year.
Wow.
And so by year 1 you write, and it's just like maybe 5 sentences or so, 3 sentences. And then you come around that same date next year. Jeez. And you see what you wrote last year.
Wow.
And he's saying Craig Groeschel was saying that how that's impacted his faith on such a huge level, that he's seen what God has done. What was a big challenge for him a year ago, how he's overcome.
Wow, that's brilliant.
And so you can see a
5-year
history. And I've heard other guys do it as well, and they say the same thing. It's just you see parts of the journey of your life.
The growth. I'm sure it's encouraging.
It is. No, so that's what the whole thing is. But then he travels through waiting. And I love this quote by Peter Marshall that he uses. Teach us, O Lord, the disciplines of patience. For to wait is often harder than to work. We just want to go. We want to run. We want to do. And it's actually a process of, I don't have the answers.
Yeah.
I don't know when this is going to change, but I'm going to wait. And I love what Craig Groeschel says. You can still serve in the waiting.
You can, yeah.
Serve God in the waiting. Serve God in the tension of unknowing. And I think that's powerful. But then even how he comes and ends it with faith. And he says he wants to believe God that it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wait. If it doesn't get better, I'm still going to believe God.
Yeah.
And this quote that he uses from Stanley Baldwin was, I am one of those who would rather sink with faith than swim without it.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. For me, I would rather have faith but never see what I have faith for come to pass than to have no faith and be right.
Well, what is life? Without trying to sound philosophical, what is life?
Philosophical moment.
Yeah. Well, what is life without faith, though? For me, that just doesn't sound. And I know we're believers, so we've got a faith system that's aligned in a certain way. But to live without faith, it just sounds horrible. To live without hope. Yeah. I've seen so many movies where people, if you can just leave somebody with an inch of hope, they've got a fighting chance.
Yeah.
As soon as you take hope away from somebody, regardless of what their circumstance or their situation looks like, you can pretty much count them out. They're a dead dog. The fight is over. But if you can leave somebody with there's a chance, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So for me, to have a God to know that in any situation, any circumstance, there's always hope. There's always faith, and there's some practical tools in here that we can hold on to.
And that's not chucking a coin into a wishing well.
No, it's not.
We're hoping for the best.
It's not.
That's not what we're talking about.
We're not talking about being weak either. I think a lot of this actually requires a lot of strength.
I think you need to have a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you got to. That's why, honestly, if you're going through anything, like listeners, if you're going through anything, or you know of someone going through a difficult time, don't even ask them. Just buy the book. It's 250 Rand. Go buy the book. Give it to them.
Yeah.
And if they have the courage to find healing, they will find it through this book. I really do believe that. I really believe that people are going to find not just a way to navigate pain, but a way to believe God, a way to have hope.
Yeah.
Because the final chapter, which we won't have time to talk about, is remember what God has done for you.
Yeah.
Right? Acceptance, it's trust, it's learning to have hope, it's believe. Right, believing in the goodness of God.
I mean, even speaking about remembering, we spoke about it this weekend. Just the story that we shared at church was the spies that went into the promised land, and how that single group of people would have first-handedly been a group of people that would have witnessed the power of God probably the most out of any other group of people. I mean, we're talking the plagues in Egypt, we're talking the sea splitting, we're talking manna, we're talking all these amazing miracles. But then when a moment came where their faith was tested, it was way easier to give a negative report. It was way easier to doubt whether God was actually going to come through for them in the situation, bar 2 of the 12 guys. I mean, that's an extremely low percentage if we're talking about responses of faith. Yeah. Remembering would have been so effective for them. Imagine just being able to look back and say, hey guys, in the last 2 months, this is what we've seen God do. And we actually didn't have to do anything. Moses, he put his stick in the water, but I don't think much else did he do to split the sea. The plagues, it was all God. For some reason, we think we get to moments in life and suddenly we've got to orchestrate it. Yeah. But God has always been the author of all the big, amazing, miraculous things in our life. So that remembering point's powerful, and we don't remember naturally. Something can happen like a week ago, and if we're not intentional about, like you're saying, writing it down or thinking about it, you just forget it.
You do.
I love that idea of a 5-year journal. Imagine you just writing down every day, and then you look back a year ago and you're like, wow. This is what God has been doing. But if I didn't write that down, I'd have no clue. Then the next obstacle would come, and I would not have remembered how God delivered me before, and then I would think, cool, this is how I've got to deliver myself in this moment. Remembering is out there. Idea. Right. Yeah.
Like even this quote here is synonymous. If you think God has forgotten you, then you have forgotten who God is.
Yeah.
I love that, because God doesn't forget us.
Never.
He never leaves us nor forsakes us. He travels through pain with us.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to jump out. Yeah.
I think some of these questions are great. Maybe just to close.
I want to have a closing story. So let's do a question, and I'll do a closing story.
A question, a closing story. I like that. Some of these questions are amazing. I think even as we're speaking about remembering.
Because there's reflections. There's questions for reflections.
Right at the back.
End of the book.
Yeah.
That you can travel through each and every chapter and have practical questions that can help. You can maybe stimulate.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going through.
Yeah, I love these questions. I think they're amazing. And just even on the line of remembering, there's 2 here. Maybe you can pick which one you'd like to answer.
No, you go.
I'm asking and answering. Okay. So the first question was, describe who you were and what you were like before you met the grace of Christ. Describe how your life changed because of who Christ is and because of what he did for you on the cross. I mean, that question in itself is just a mind blast, because if we all had to just look back and think about the type of people we were before we met Jesus or before we got connected to him in relationship, it would be a complete... it's like a different person. I see some memes on Instagram, they're hilarious, of guys meeting Jesus, and then their friends are like, oh, you've changed. And the dude's like, isn't that the point? Am I not supposed to have changed? Isn't that why I'm doing this? I think that's a great question. Also something to think about. And the other one was this. What are your 3 favorite God moments? Times when you knew that God was with you or working on your behalf or revealing himself to you in a special way.
Good.
I think that's powerful, and for me, I'd have to sit and think, but I think there were moments definitely in my life where I was delivered from stuff and where my life should have taken a certain route, but I think God brought definitely some divine intervention through people at like just the right time. You met an individual and they just came, almost like a guardian angel, but they've been on earth and they haven't ascended yet or anything, but God used them, and I can, without going into too much detail, I can think about people right now in my head that if it wasn't for that person at that moment, my life would be completely different. Awesome. And that's just from a quick thought, but imagine we could do this exercise. Imagine you can just write down, this is who I was before God, look at my life now. And even just 3 things. God
Could we
changed
say
it.
that if someone bought this book and they worked through these questions, there's no way you're not taking time to listen, to write,
impossible.
to reflect, and to actually see God move. Like, here's a great question. How has God helped you grow in the past? What do you sense God doing to prepare you for the future?
That's great.
Like, even trials, and so they can be.
Well, it's a total mindset shift. It's now not what's happening to me. It's what is God doing right now that is preparing me for what's to come.
Right,
So
yeah.
now this thing that suddenly is we've always viewed as this is an issue, this is a problem, this is taking up my time, this is whatever, giving me anxiety. Now it's like, whoa. Wait, what is this? Oh, okay, this is God preparing some mental capacity. God is bringing some strength to my life. God is giving me an ability to acknowledge and see
Preaching
something
now.
and do, let's go. And an ability to do something more. And we can just, listen, and it's not easy all the time, but to be able to look at certain things in our life and be like, this isn't happening to me.
Yeah.
We can use this.
Good.
God wants to use this. This is happening
good.
to me for something.
Yes, that's so good. That's like taking raw material and building something with it. I love it. I love it.
Then life becomes,
Romans 8:28, God turns all things to the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose.
and we all, that's all of us.
Exactly, good.
That's all of us.
You can obviously see I'm a quote guy. I love quotes.
No, the quotes are good though.
William Barclay, to end off this awesome, look, again, highly recommend the book.
Please, guys, get it.
Especially if you're going through difficulty or you know somebody who is.
Yeah.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
Is this from William Barclay? Endurance is not just the ability to bear a hard thing, but to turn it into glory. I love that. And why I conclude with that is because he tells a lot of real stories from people that he knows in this book.
I love that. I
As
thought
well
it was
as
so
his
cool.
own stories, his own scars and wounds of their family on the table.
Yeah.
And how the conclusion is that, okay, this is not a spoiler, but this is just kind of giving you an idea, is that his wife's brother ends up in hospital. Radical transformation in Christ, and wants his life to be used for the glory of God. And they pray, and he's got a big network of people, sends out prayer. Thousands of people are praying, except the brother dies. How do you take that?
Yeah.
But then he speaks at the funeral, and many people give their life to Christ.
Jeez.
And I love it. Like, I don't know how they got to this, but then he asks his wife a couple of years later or sometime later and says, look, God did a lot of stuff in people's lives. A lot of people came to salvation because of your brother dying.
Wow.
Would you rather have
What a
him back?
radical thought.
Would you rather have him back, or would you rather have that impact? And she's like, I would much rather have the impact. I would, because God has turned it. I will see my brother again.
Yeah, I'll see him
heaven,
again. Yeah.
But I'm also going to see all the people that his story has impacted in heaven as well. And I just thought that was so beautiful because it turns the trial
Yeah,
into glory.
it does.
And so I think that's a great way to go through difficulties, is realizing that
very
God's
good.
going to use this, no matter how difficult it seems, for glory.
Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend the book. I don't know, should we get a rating system for books? Guys, let us know. How do you rate books?
I also don't know.
Because like, if someone wasn't going through a
5-star
difficult time,
system.
I'd like, yeah, maybe a 2, 3 out of. But if you're going through difficulty, like, this is a definite 4.5.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
If you get a 5 out of 5 from me, it's insane.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen.
I'm like the guy who rates the
4.9.
rates service, and I'm always like, you can't be perfect. So
You can't.
4.5. Or
I think that's
4.9.
good. I like that system.
Yeah.
That system. But this book has been brilliant. We want to even just thank Craig Groeschel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably won't see
Thanks,
this,
Craig.
but
We appreciate you
yeah.
writing this book.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
know.
thank you so much for the book and for all the impact that you've had and your church has had, and just for everybody that's watched on YouTube and for our listeners that are on the podcast. There you go. It's a nice close up of the title. We're doing something cool. We'd love to give away our 2 copies.
Yeah.
That we've read here, and all you need to do. Well, what really helps us is when we rate and review and speak about the podcast. So what really helps us is when that happens. So what we'd like to do is, if you'd be interested in winning for free one of our copies, all you need to do is to go on Instagram and share us in either an Instagram story or an Instagram post. Please don't forget to tag us, because if you don't tag us, we might not
We
see
don't know.
it.
Yeah. So at The 167 podcast.
Yeah.
That's the
If you
Instagram
if you follow us first, the tag will pop up. Give us a follow, share the post, and then either in the caption or in the comment section or in your story itself, maybe just share one sentence of what the 16 or what this particular podcast did, maybe for your faith, for your walk, what it's taught you about hope, what it's taught you about tough questions, and I think that'll be awesome. And then we'll find you, we'll contact you, we'll DM you, and then we will give you your book. We'd love to give 2 copies away to 2 different people.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So the first 2, I think, was it the first 2 or we'll judge.
You guys go for it. You post
The most compelling story.
Yeah. I think
we do want
we'll
to
be
see
fair. We'll be fair.
Yeah.
We'll probably do a hat, names and a hat.
If you don't have Instagram, what you want to go and do is you want to download the internet.
Yeah.
Join life. I'm joking, I'm teasing. But yeah, tag us on Instagram with the story, and we will get hold of you in the next few days.
Definitely.
About how we can get out the book to you. 2 copies, unspoiled, no highlights. They're free for you.
Some tears and drenched into the pages. Just Swen's copy. But I just want to remind you guys also to please subscribe to us on YouTube, and also if you are a podcast listener, rate, review us.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and a whole list of other podcasts.
We're all over. And tell your friends about us. Tell the people that can benefit from this. Again, we don't claim to know it all. We don't claim to be the funniest or the smartest, but we do want to be helpful. And we really hope that in these conversations that we are. But we want to thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.
Peace.